Do you remember your very first Tinder date? That strange mix of trepidation, excitement, angst, naivete, and straight up dread brewing in your stomach like black coffee and a Jack-in-the-Box breakfast burrito after a night of heavy drinking? Well, I'm going to tell you about mine. Hi, I'm Kelly Shanley, and this is For Love or Peanut Butter, a true life dating podcast in which a seemingly eligible yet perpetually single woman, that's me, finally delves into the why and the how she has remained single into her mid-30s. And she changes her life forever. I think we all know Tinder's reputation for sexual frivolity, if you will. And as a somewhat passive participant in casual sex, I was intimidated. I pictured my date arriving pantsless and demanding I strip immediately, like a libidinous Winnie the Pooh who's gone too long without his honey pot.
Oh, bother.
His name was Steven. He seemed friendly, cute, and unterrifying, with a beard and light eyes, like any handsome serial killer. He suggested a hike for our date, which felt like a very non-sexual location and put me at ease. So much so that I overlooked the fact that he was luring me to a remote location with which I was unfamiliar. Oops. Like I said, first Tinder date. I developed much more stringent safety guidelines after that. Rule number 1, don't go on a new to you hike on a first date. You will get sweaty and you could get lost or murdered. Steven found me in the parking lot and reached out for a handshake. I intercepted with a hug. My standard greeting for first dates. It's important to me to see how someone hugs. Do they go for the overly intimate long squeeze or the creepy butt graze? Ew. Maybe they tense up like a slow dancing middle schooler?
I'm uncomfortable.
You can tell a lot about a person by how they hug a stranger. Steven's hug was of the middle schooler persuasion, like he wasn't quite ready for physical contact. Who's the sexual predator now? I made sure to keep my hands safely above his buttocks so as not to trigger the underlying sexual tension he was surely restraining. Rule number 2, do not grab someone's butt on a first date. Unless they're falling and that just happens to be how you catch them. Steven didn't talk much, and I could tell the conversation would require a bit of heavy lifting on my part, so I took the lead. Where are you from? I asked. Do you have any pets? If you were a ghost, would you wear pants? He was not amused. Rule number 3, if you're on a date with a silent person, at some point you have to stop digging for topics and just wait them out. They'll crack eventually. After a few minutes of silent strolling, Steven picked up a rock and held it out to me. Then he started talking, like really talking. He told me all about the rock, what type of sediment it was, how old it must have been, that it was a passionate but volatile Scorpio. As it turned out, geology was his passion, and rocks were his jam.
You rock, Rock.
Oh, this guy didn't bring me out here to seduce me or murder me. He wanted to impress me with his sexy rock knowledge. I'd found a real gem. As we walked, Steven picked up different rocks and presented them to me like a third grader at show and tell, stowing his favorites in his pocket for later. He pointed out a giant boulder with veins of gold woven throughout, and I cracked a joke about panning for gold. He looked me dead in the eyes and said, I do pan for gold. You guys, I was on a date with a real-life 49er, but one of the historical miners the football team is named after, not a golden spandex-clad quarterback.
Bang, bang, Niner Jack.
Steven then launched into a full presentation on how to pan for gold. He squatted down, showed me his form, and explained that normally there would be a pan in his hands, but you just have to picture it. And then he pretended that he found some gold in his pan. So I played along. You rock. And I asked him if I could keep the gold he had just found as a token of our date. He looked at me like I was nuts. Really? That was too much?
I give up. I'm giving up.
Once the demonstration concluded, we continued along the trail, and I tried to divert the conversation to some regular topics. I asked him what kind of music he liked. The Rolling Stones, I presume? Silence. Okay. How about movies? School of Rock? The Flintstones? The Sword in the Stone? He just looked at me stone-faced. Tough crowd. Rule number 4. If they don't laugh at the first 3 terrible rock puns,
Please don't.
obviously press on until they do. I guessed about food this time. Fruity Pebbles? Rock salt? Limestone? Nothing. Oh, see this rock over here? He wandered off to grab yet another piece of slate and show it to me. This date was on the rocks and not like a nice bourbon. At least he wasn't paying attention to how sweaty I was getting. I'd have had to morph into a piece of granite for him to really pay attention, which was fine, honestly, because I definitely had a salt line developing around my lower back, upper butt crack region. Sexy. I tried to ask how much longer the hike was going to be without actually whining, "Are we there yet?" He estimated we were halfway because we had almost reached his favorite cave. Uh-oh. Like a sex cave? Nope. Not a sex cave, just more rocks. I emerged unscathed until the pop quiz section of our date began. Stephen would hold up a rock. "Hey, do you know what kind of rock this is?" Me. Classic? Talk about rock bottom. Rule number 5. If someone tests you on your date, your best line of defense is a good offensive joke. We finally returned to the parking lot and I was ready to go home and wash the salt off. Then Stephen told me what a great time he'd had and how this date had rocked. I knew it! He does do rock puns! I hadn't realized that inundating me with his extensive geological knowledge was his way of peacocking. I thought he just found me boring. He invited me to lunch. Where are you headed? The Hard Rock Cafe?
Just couldn't help yourself, could you?
He uninvited me to lunch. No, not really. But I just wasn't feeling that pure animal magnetism I had been so anticipating and fearing. I found its absence to be quite vexing. I told him I had to get going, and he was disappointed but respectful. And so the search continued for my diamond in the rough. I'm Kelly Shanley, and this is For Love or Peanut Butter. For Love or Peanut Butter is created, written, and performed by me, Kelly Shanley. Produced and edited by Z. Rodriguez-Thomas for Mind Jam Media. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to follow the podcast and leave us a glowing review. If you can't wait to hear the next one, check out the column of the same name on Medium. Link in show notes. And be sure to follow me on social media. On Instagram and TikTok, you can find me at Kelly A. Shanley. On YouTube, Facebook, and Medium, at Kelly Shanley. Thanks so much for listening and stay crunchy out there. Or smooth.